This video focuses on what to do with previously used jewelry. Previously used jewelry can come from a variety of sources. It can be jewelry that you own and perhaps you lost one half of a pair of earrings, or your bracelet came apart, maybe because the elastic was worn. Or maybe it's a piece of jewelry that you wore a lot, but now its setting doesn't quite work with your sense of style, but you like a lot of the elements that are in the piece, and so you want to take it apart and redesign it. Previously used jewelry can also be things that you find on consignment. As a crafter, I really like going to consignment stores and looking for inexpensive pieces of jewelry that for which I like the beads and maybe some of the chains and metal pieces, and I can easily take apart and reincorporate pieces of that into other pieces of jewelry. As a crafter, there's a lot of the things that that's been previously used are things that I made for myself, and I'm taking them apart for a variety of reasons. In the case of this earring, it's a pair of earrings I made. I absolutely loved the beads when I purchased them, and I'm the type of person that loves very large jewelry, large earrings, and but with this particular pair, I really pressed the limits as to how much weight I could carry on my earlobes. I wore them a couple times and really decided that maybe this was not the thing to do long term. So I set them aside, and I'm going to pull them apart. I'll discard the findings, but I'll keep all the beads and rework probably the larger bead. I have a plan, because I actually have a couple others. I have the other bead to the other pair, and then other beads the same make, that I will repurpose into probably a pendant necklace, and then make a pair of earrings, probably with these smaller beads that would match, but just without this larger bead on the earring itself. So that's one item of mine that's going to get taken apart. Another one is a necklace. I love the colors. This necklace was a little too short. This was when I was first starting out with crafting, and I hadn't yet gotten a necklace board to really be able to measure size. I also, in looking at this, am not really pleased with how the wire is held up on the crimp ends. So I'm going to take it apart and see what I might have where I can maybe remake this a little bit longer and just restyle it a little bit, so that way it lays better and I feel more comfortable in the security of the of how I crimped the ends. While I don't, on earrings, I don't save ear wires. What I do, I will save, if it's still in good shape, I will save clasps on necklaces, both from stuff that I've made and stuff that I pick up in consignment stores. Though another note about consignment finds, though, I mean, I'm not, even with my own stuff, I'm not using particularly expensive pieces and expensive metal. I'm shopping a lot through Michael's and things like that. But if you have anybody that has any sort of metal allergies, then I would be careful that as you start picking apart consignment finds, you separate those out from your standard bead stash that perhaps you bought from a vendor where you can verify what the beads are made of. Just because if you know that there's people that have certain allergies to certain materials, in consignment finds, there's no way of really knowing what you're getting, so you want to kind of set those aside in a separate organizational system, so that way you don't incorporate those into pieces that you're giving away to people with sensitivities to materials. First, I want to start with what I look for in consignment pieces. First and foremost, I'm looking for something that already catches the eye because the beads themselves appeal to me. They don't necessarily have to appeal to me in the original setting, but there needs to be some appeal in that I can see where I can possibly use them in another design idea. I'm also looking for pieces that I can easily take apart and that are that the price is inexpensive. In my consignment finds, I have probably the most expensive piece I ever bought was, I think I spent about $10 for something that I bought that was a piece of dichroic glass. And anybody that has shopped for finished dichroic glass, or even just the element to then be beaded around, dichroic can be very expensive. And so whenever I find pieces, and I found a few of them, I usually scoop those up and set them aside for when I get some inspiration. But other than that, I usually look for pieces that are somewhere between the $1 to $5 range. And for that price, I'm looking for pieces that are going to be really easy for me to then take apart. Anything that is attached to a chain is usually fine, because chains are just like jump rings. You can kind of pry apart one of the loops to disengage it from the piece, and then save the chain if it's in good shape itself, because something this short I can use again as another necklace, or I've actually used lengths of chain on earrings, and to as a way to display larger beads. It's a different way of doing earrings instead of just stringing them on head pins. I also look for things that are that are just easily strung beyond this. This looks like it's just done on regular beading wire, and so I can clip that off. I'm not going to save the beading wire itself. Mostly because, it's possible that I wouldn't be able to use the wire in another necklace because it would just be too short after clipping it off from the clasps. Might be able to be used in a necklace, in a bracelet, but really, not really knowing what the age of that wire is, it's really just going to be better to get rid of it and start with a new stringing wire. That I know will hold up and hasn't been compromised just by age and use. So that's usually what I'm looking for in my consignment pieces: are inexpensive, easy to take apart. Anything that's soldered or wire wrapped or anything like that is usually going to end up being too much work. So unless I like it for on its own merit, I usually walk away from things like that. When I get consignment finds, usually before I start taking them apart, I wipe them down with alcohol just to clean them up from having been previously used. When working with previously owned earrings, I always take off the ear wire and discard it. I don't reuse those. And I will likely, for something like this, not reuse the wire finding that the beads are on right now, because again, after having been used and then clipped and cut off, it really is not going to be, it's not sturdy enough. It's been compromised, it's been weakened, and it's better to just start fresh with your actual stringing material. When you wipe down beads, when you go to clean beads for any reason, a lot of beads have dye in them to further the color, so you don't want to let them sit in the alcohol for too long, and you do want to pat them dry, because then you're going to notice if you lay down paper towel, or sometimes I even use paper plates, you'll notice that the dye does rub off. So you're going to want to kind of pat them dry and then put them again on yet another fresh piece of paper towel, so that way the dye from one piece does not rub off on another piece, if at all possible. So once my jewelry is all cleaned up and ready for demo, that's usually when I pull out all my wire cutters, and I have in my little plastic bag storages. If you'll see in my previous video what I do to organize beads that I have in inventory, you'll see that I make use of a lot of different size plastic bags to store things, and so that way, because I might not have an idea for them yet but at least I'll start pulling apart the pieces, discarding what I don't want, and then sorting and storing what I do want to keep, so that way I know what I have on hand when inspiration strikes to repurpose the beads.